Welcome back to
Thanks,
the podcast, Pavan. It is always a great experience to have a conversation with you. Last time, I think we had a great experience on discussing about your book, your design, your thinking.
Yeah.
Congratulations for your latest release,
Thank you.
Design Your Career. I just finished reading the book. Lot of insights, so inspired. I'm excited to deep dive into this book because in this VUCA world, a lot of challenges people are facing to make decisions on career. You can share insights to our audience about how we can design our career.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks, Bala. Okay, so for the uninitiated amongst you, what is VUCA? So VUCA stands for Volatile, Uncertain, Complex, Ambiguous. Ambiguous means lack of clarity. And this word VUCA was actually coined by one of the military generals in the Vietnam War. Okay. So when America was fighting the Vietnam War, the kind of situation that these soldiers were exposed to was very volatile and uncertain. They had very little understanding of what could unfold and when, and consequently they were under enormous amount of stress because of that. Now, when we juxtapose that same phenomena of a military warfare situation onto economics, I think we are doing an exaggeration.
Oh,
okay? Because if you think about it, what is fast? As we were walking around the IIM Bangalore campus, nothing was in any hurry. The trees, the butterfly, the flowers, the leaves, everything was having its own pace. Including the students, I think they were pretty much relaxed and going about their business. So the idea is that it was always volatile if you think about that. It was always complex if you think about that. We are sitting in 2024. Imagine we were sitting in 1924. In 1924, we just came out of the First World War. First World War had more than few million people losing their lives for absolutely no gain. And the First World War also sowed the seed for the Second World War. Okay. In 1924, as the economies were building up, you would have thought that the worst is behind you. But you had no idea that in 1929, you will be witnessing the greatest depression of all times. The 2008 economic depression was still not as complex as 1929 depression. And then 10 years from there, you had 1939, which is the start of the Second World War. So now I keep wondering that what was more complex? What was more uncertain? 2024 or 1924? So suddenly you start realizing that it was 1924 which was more complex, which was more uncertain than we are. So what we need to understand is that let us not glorify this VUCA word. And this is very critical because once you start glorifying some of these things, you are putting yourself under enormous pressure. And as a result, what I advocate as the first chapter in the book is that life is long, pace it well. I strongly believe that there is no need to rush into a life and no need to be somebody and achieve something by the time you are 40. Now that you know that you live well into your 70th birthday, why not pace it well? What's the point of running a marathon at the speed of a sprint? And what's the point that you are running so fast? And this is very critical for the working professionals because we have lost a sense of perspective that what is it that we are trying to achieve? We need to understand that economics is in the service of biology and not biology is in the service of economics. We don't live to pump India's GDP. India's GDP is there so that we are living better. So you are not born and you're not educated so that some companies can meet their quarterly targets. I think it's a very myopic, very convoluted way of looking at the whole thing. So in summary, we should not glorify VUCA because it is always the case, right? In fact, if you now look at it, we are living in the most peaceful times in human civilization, in the human history. The 200,000 years of history of human being, recorded history of human being. This is a time when we have the least level of homicide, least level of genocides, least level of people dying with avoidable diseases. I was just reading that how America's President Abraham Lincoln's own son died when he was in White House of cholera.
Mm. Yeah.
Imagine the most powerful person's son dies in White House owing to cholera, owing to consuming contaminated water. That was the time that we were living in. How uncertain times were, right? How
Yes.
helpless we were. Now we have tamed nature into our submission. We have controlled our fate to a large extent, which means that we're living in a very peaceful society, relatively speaking. But are we at peace inside?
Not at all.
This is funny, right? So
Yeah.
while the society in which we are living is so peaceful, we are ourselves from inside not peaceful. So any amount of progress that you make on the external world can never compensate for the lack of progress in your internal world.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted this book to come out to give people to get a perspective on this whole topic, that career is not what you do for a living. Career is not what you do for money. Career is what you do throughout your life. And that's where it needs to be thought about. It can't be accidental. So that's what the book is all about.
Yeah, that's very true. And people always think that busyness is business.
Yeah.
They want to settle, and then after 40 years or after the retirement, they want to pursue their interest or whatever they are passionate about.
Yes.
Because there are so much hype around us. In that case, what kind of tech-proof career we can design?
Yeah.
Because a lot of options are there, how we can anchor ourselves within so that we can see and choose.
That's a good question. So first of all, we need to think about designing a career and not planning a career.
Oh, okay.
Now there is a word, design has been used very consciously. Instead of career planning, it is career design.
Yeah.
And the reason I've avoided the word planning is because planning has an inherent flaw in it, which is called as a planning fallacy.
Okay.
Whenever you set a plan, you assume that after the moment you have put that pen on the paper, after that things are not changing in the external environment, which means that the condition that you have taken are static there.
Okay.
But nothing is farther from truth. Conditions are continuously changing even after you have put the pen on the paper. And as a result, you must have been to so many conferences. How many conferences actually stick to their schedule?
Yeah.
How many conferences have we exactly started at 2 o'clock, exactly have that lunch break, tea break? Invariably, all conferences, even the best of the conferences, are typically running behind schedule. So planning has a fallacy that you take a lot of things for granted. You assume a lot of things are static and controllable, which is not true. So in planning, you are trusting the external world.
Yes.
That it will behave. In designing, you are making yourself so equipped that whatever is happening around, you will still perform. So design is not about what is happening outside, design is about what is happening inside you.
Oh.
So at the end of this designing of your career, what would happen to you is that you would be much less dependent on the external vagaries, on the external situations and external velocities, and you'll be much more in control of things. And things may not go as per the plan, which is typically the case. Things don't go as per the plan. But you would still be better off because you have factored all those exigencies. So to borrow Nicholas Nassim Taleb's phrase, the word which I use is anti-fragile.
Oh, nice.
You'll become anti-fragile. It's that you will not get shattered by one of your assumptions going wrong. And I believe that you may die accidentally, but you can't afford to live accidentally. You have to live as per a design, intent and design. And career being such a massive part of your life, it can't be an outcome of accident. It has to be well thought through.
So if you want to design our career with intent, what are the factors we have to consider?
So I'll just answer this question in 3 folds. The first is to knowing your prime movers. What motivates you? Now we are all busy in a way doing stuff which we find meaning to ourselves. But then we need to understand what is our primary propellant. What propels us? What drives us? And in the book I've discussed about 4 key drivers. The first driver is fear. Fear is a very primordial driver. Fear has been the driver that has taken us to this place today because our ancestors were always paranoid.
Correct.
That something may not happen, right? Or that they get eaten up, or there is a flood, or there is an earthquake or something like that. So we are always paranoid, and that's the reason we have survived. So fear is a good driver. But what has happened is that even though we don't have a Russell snake, a saber-toothed tiger, or that we don't have hurricanes, etc., but that fear is still lurking in us. Which means that even for the simple things, our mind still invokes the exact same fear response. The response which we had looking at a snake is akin to the fear that we have looking at a cockroach. The fear that we had looking at a bear would pretty much be the fear that you would have getting a call from your boss.
Correct. And also obviously fear of missing out, FOMO.
Exactly, fear of missing out. Which means that fear is a big driver, but the only problem with fear as a driver is that it exhausts you. And we see so many people who wanting to retire at the age of 40, getting to a ICU at the age of 40. Who are wanting to really spend a luxurious life after their 40-45 birthday are getting used to pills, getting used to problems that would visit you only at the age of 60. It has only happened because we have accelerated so much in such a small time, as if everything is going to evaporate. So that's a massive fear. The second is greed. And that's the story of the startup community. I don't think startup founders are driven so much by fear as much as by greed. That they want to encash an opportunity, they want to go out and create millions for themselves, get their name etched in the annals of history and what have you. But the problem with greed is that you never know what is enough.
Yeah, it's very comparative.
Yeah, so you never know when to pull the plug or when to hit the brakes or when to say it's okay, I can take a back seat. And most people burn themselves in the pursuit of more. So we have fear, we have greed. The third is duty, a sense of duty. A sense of duty is what make you most likely show up on time at your office. A sense of duty is what you would have to pick your daughter or child from school, or to go to the parent-teacher meeting and do your usual stuff. There is a sense of duty. But the problem with duty as a philosophy is that duty has an inherent reciprocity. That you perform the duty only if there is reciprocity from the other end, in the form of either compensation or in the form of some rewards, recognition, acknowledgement, etc. So that's the problem with duty. There is a reciprocity expectation. But the most pious, the most pure of all of these drivers could possibly be love. Because in love, you are not rushing to love somebody. You are not rushing to get that love. Often the love could also be unconditional. Now the very fact that you are sitting right in front of me is your love for the podcast, isn't it? I don't think that you are doing this podcast to get more money, or you fear that if I don't do the podcast, somebody will get mad at me, or that you think I must do this podcast as a weekly basis. None of that. You just love it. You love the fact that you should share something to the world, which is meaningful. And that's the reason you enjoy doing it. That's the reason you took the pain to travel all the way to IIM Bangalore campus, read the book, you're sitting in front of me, curating questions, etc. So I think love is something which is visible. So the first recipe that we need to, and this for the audience, is to understand that in your 8 hours of work or 24 hours of day, what is this segment which you love? It is very unlikely that any job in the world can give you 8 hours of love.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
Impossible.
Yes.
Even your honeymoon cannot be 24 hours of love.
Yes, true.
You will have all these fear, greed, duty will also kick in your honeymoon period, isn't it?
Yes.
So any job can never promise you 8 hours of love day in and day out. Any job. Maybe for the first few days you might be in that glorified state of mind, but then after that reality will hit you. There are duties to be performed. However, if you realize that there is something in my 8 hours which I love doing, that is what is the first realization. Now how do you maximize it? And the fear and the duty and the greed is the cost of retaining that love.
Yes.
You hold on to that love. That I love going in front of the customer and making the pitch. That's what I love, because that gives me the high. For example, for somebody else, I love solving problems. For somebody, I love negotiating. I love inducting. I love interviewing. I love teaching.
Yeah, of course, in your book you mentioned that you are so passionate about teaching.
Yeah. So when I was in Wipro, this dawned upon me that while I was an employee and I had to perform my duty with a bit of fear and greed around it, but what I was really loving, even at Wipro or even outside of Wipro, was teaching. I would love to rush to go to a college or a school and teach, engage with people. In a client context, I'll go and take the stage and perform these things. And that's why I realized that let's put food where the mouth is. If I love teaching, why not double down on that and do a solid PhD?
Yes.
And that's where one career decision led to another, which is to come down to do a PhD. And that's when it occurred to me that I love writing. For example, just before we met, I was in the library.
Yes.
What I was doing is I was writing an article there. And I thought that the story must be told. I always believe that if I have an idea, instead of being subjecting that idea to too much of a scrutiny and criticism, that who will read it, am I saying something original, is it out of context, am I good enough? So often what happens is we become so critical about our own selves that the idea stands no chance by anybody else's critique. So if you really look at my own life, it has been a series of discoveries, but the central position has been that you chase what you love.
Yes.
You have to really chase what you love, and the economics of it will fall around it.
Well, that's true. When I was having conversation with my teenage daughter, like how to find our passion or what we love, because there are a lot of choices and peer pressure, of course.
Yes.
So how that intrinsic way of finding our true
That's
love?
a good question. It's a fantastic question, and I'm sure a lot of audience in that age bracket would resonate with this. I think criticality is to keep tinkering, is to keep experimenting.
Okay.
I always believe that till the age of 35, you need to keep tinkering in your life. Because on average, we are living till the age of 70. In urban India, 70 is the typical age people cross. So which means that till the age of 35, you can wildly experiment. But after the age of 35, you need to start settling down with some very specific career choices. Or so to say that till the time you're 35, you should solve problems.
Okay.
After 35, you should avoid problems.
Okay.
You should avoid problems. You can't solve problems, you have to avoid problems. Okay? Because the cost of loss can be very high and it is not personal. There are other people who will be impacted by that. So you have to keep tinkering. What happens is that you need to learn to take half chances. In your teens and early 20s, you need to take half chances. Let's see what happens. Let's go and experiment this. Because the worst that can happen is you fail. And because you're not taking such a monumental risk as such, your failure would not hurt anybody. It would not even bruise your ego because you didn't have much to begin with.
Correct.
But at the same time, you would not have a regret that, gosh, why didn't I try that? So that is what I'm trying to offer, that we need to allow our children to experiment widely, as long as it is in the ambit of integrity and ethics.
Yeah.
And it is not hazardous to their physical or moral self. As long as it is that bound. Because what idea did our parents have that we would have tattoo artists as a profession in this generation?
Oh, I thought about that. Yeah.
We couldn't think beyond doctor and engineering.
Yeah.
We have very good tattoo artists. We have ski resort owners. We have people who are birthday planners. Wedding planning is such a huge industry, right? Almost recession-proof industry it is. Correct? So there are so many different markets which are yet to be opened, which would need different type of talent. And I'm only suggesting something that nature has engineered in itself. As you're walking down the IMB campus, the first thing that you would observe is the flora and fauna.
So beautiful.
The richness of the nature which endowed upon us. Imagine if nature was mad to consider one tree as the best tree, as the perfect tree, and replicate all the trees with that perfection. It would be so boring.
Yeah, homogeneous and
right?
so boring. Yeah.
So boring. Including the leaves of the tree are never exactly the same. If you look at the vein structure of any leaf of a tree, it never matches with the same tree's vein structure of another leaf. Which means variety is natural. All we have to do is to allow it.
Okay.
Your child, the two children born of the same womb, a second apart, will never be same.
Yes.
Then how can two children in the same classroom be same? So what is happening is that our education system and our parenting to a large extent is hammering conformity into our children. So we can only allow them, and our role as a parent is not so much to guide them as much as to catch them when they fall. We can't lead from ahead, we have to lead from behind.
Yes.
That let me show you is not the way. Let me protect you in case. So I'll just stand here, you go ahead and try. If you fail, I'll be there, don't worry. But go and try.
Yes.
Because if you don't do this in this generation, when will we do it?
Yeah, I think.
When our parents slogged so hard so that we can have a better life. And again, we are slogging hard to give children a better life. So all they will learn is to slog hard.
Yes.
So I think as children, we need to allow them to be experimentative. And when you experiment, more often than not, you will fail. Most experiments result into failure. Even well-intended ones result into failure. But the thing is, when you fail, you need to learn to forgive yourself.
You have to accept first. Right.
So what happens is that many times we are okay to forgive people around us, but we don't forgive ourselves. How can I do this? How can I be so stupid? How can I be so naive? But the thing is that why can't you be stupid? Anybody can be stupid. People have done gigantic failures. Errors of judgment has been monumental. So can you fail. What's the big deal in that? But the challenge of failure acceptance is not so much personal as much as societal.
Yeah.
What will my dad think? What will my mom think? What will my friends and uncles and aunts and teachers think? So I think as a society, if we can allow the children to be themselves, we'll be far more creative and a lot more career options will open up consequently.
Yeah, because external validation, we are always seeking.
Yes.
That in your book you mentioned that before you want to be a tech pro, we need certain kind of elements within us to see what we want. Three factors. Clarity you mentioned, right? Attention, empathy, and creativity.
Yes.
So I love that things. Maybe you can
Yeah,
share
I
your
would.
thoughts on that.
Thank you so much. So when I was growing up, my dad used to say that time is money, right? And knowledge is power. And as I realizing now, he wasn't exactly right. Time is not money. Attention is money. It's not time which is money. It's the attention which is money. It might so happen that you are spending time on certain thing, but if your attention is elsewhere, the time has no meaning whatsoever. And it always happens, very often it happens when you're driving a car. Where you're spending your time driving the car, but your attention need not be in driving the car. It may be in listening to a podcast. It may be in listening to a song, talking to somebody right next to you, or worse still talking on the phone. So your attention and time is seldom at the same place. Now what is happening in today's world where content is cheap?
Yes.
And I get horrified when I look at 4 a.m., our Bangalore International Airport. That at 4 a.m., which can arguably be the most high value time in anybody's day, 4 a.m., because you can do remarkable things at 4 a.m. if you are awake. At 4 a.m. when I'm looking at the waiting lounge at the airports, I see tons and tons of people glued onto that 4-inch by 3-inch screen and consuming stuff. Unbeknown to them. And the funny thing is nobody is even happy doing it. I don't see people smiling, yelling and getting entertained. They are so zombified by that screen that they are almost missing their announcements and maybe missing their flight boarding. And the problem is that our attention is not controlled by us. It's controlled by somebody else.
Yeah.
What we are not realizing is that the content is free, but the attention is not free.
True.
When somebody else is grabbing your attention and you are almost like zombified by that particular screen, they are dictating what your mind can and cannot do. And after a point of time, it might so happen that our next generation of children might be rendered incapable of original thinking. Because original thinking does not come by looking at stuff, but by contemplating of what happened and what did not happen. If our attention is totally consumed by that device and all that content which is floating around, where is our attention? Our attention is not with us. So paying attention to your attention means to grab your attention back from the people around you. That no, I will decide. And I give some very simple tips in the book. To begin with, turning off all your notifications. Your phone should not demand your attention. You should decide when to touch your phone. And you would realize that many sort of interruptions which happen because of these pings that come up or these alerts that come up, they break your train of thought. So when I'm writing the book, one of my disciplines is that I keep the phone, I have a drawer in my writing table. I typically write either at IIM Bangalore Library or at my home. So I have a nice table. So I have a drawer, I put my phone in the drawer for about, I'll just focus on my unit of work, no emails opened up, no alerts. And in that 3 hours of writing, I can write 2,000-3,000 words. And then I look at my phone, look at it for about 20 minutes or so if there is really any urgent, which is typically not the case. Again, put the phone back. And then again, solid. So if you can divide your life into solid chunks of work, uninterrupted, I don't think anything is impossible. What we are doing is we are butchering our attention. Yes. The moment I start thinking about something creative, something which requires cognitive capacity, ping, an alert comes and my attention is gone there. So by the time I will get back to that rhythm, another time is lost, and then I say that forget about this man, let's see what's there on the Facebook.
True, actually, because to do the deep work, we need attention. And in your book, quotes from the greatest philosopher, Jiddu Krishnamurti, his thoughts resonates with me always. And one of the quotes he mentioned, complete attention is love. And attention is different from concentration, right? So I guess even behavioral science behind the product and everything is telling about how to get customers' attention and sell, because we are giving our attention so that they are making use of it. And the second thing you mentioned after attention is empathy.
Yes.
Because that's what the differentiator between us and the machines. A lot of practices you mentioned in the book. Maybe you can just mention practices of how to empathize and adding value to people's life.
Thank you so much, Bala. So empathy is a very critical attribute that we need to have, because I believe that what machines cannot take away from us is a genuine sense of empathy and creativity.
Yes.
I don't think machines can empathize with us yet. A machine cannot, unless it is hard coded, say that I think you seem to be tired, go away from Facebook and take a break.
And also do some sentimental analysis based upon the text and voice, tone, also. Right.
So anything that machine does will always come out as fake because it is programmed and we can see it. So I think what humans are endowed with is this massive ability of empathy, of compassion. And if we are not being compassionate, then we are almost mechanical, not organic. And I often say that in the pursuit of making machines more human, we humans are becoming more machines.
That's very true.
How to develop empathy? The first attribute of developing empathy is to be a good listener. I think listening as a skill has been undervalued.
Yes.
Not many books, not much discourse is happening around why it is important to be a good listener and how to be a good listener. So I think listening with intent is extremely critical. And if you want to be a leader, let alone a good manager, listening will go the distance, because what I have seen is that great leaders are fantastic listeners.
Yes.
And because they listen to people, that people listen to them. So listen with intent. The second thing is observe with purpose. Be a good observer. And for that, you need to really take yourself away from that screen time. Observe the world around you. You'll see a lot of opportunities for ideas and inventions and entrepreneurship. Because if you really look at the seed of any new idea, the seed of any new invention, it actually happened because somebody was struggling with a problem. All these startups which have come up is somebody's life experiences, somebody's observation that, hey, there is a room somewhere. And I think those gaps or those interstices in the world is where the ideas are hidden. And you observe those ideas and bring them up to life. And the third thing, which is perhaps the most difficult, is to defer your judgment. Don't be judgmental. As much as possible, don't be judgmental. So there is this very profound saying by Oscar Wilde, right? That judge no one, for every saint had a past, every sinner has a future.
Yeah.
So who is a saint today may have had a very gory past, a very unrespectable past, and who is a sinner today may end up becoming a saint, because of all it takes for people to change their lives is one life episode. One episode can transform people's lives. So by being judgmental about people, by being critical about situations, it not only disincentivizes them to change themselves and be any better or do any better, it also puts those blinders around your own eyes that you can't see the world in its true self. So I think this is where you start developing compassion, and I have tried, I'm not there certainly, but I have tried to learn that when I'm in a class, I try to be non-judgmental as much as possible. Whether somebody listens to me, doesn't, pays attention or do not, takes notes, doesn't, asks questions, agrees, disagrees, turned in the assignment, etc. I'm trying to be non-judgmental, because by being non-judgmental, I'm not burdening myself. And that I'm light and free to teach what I'm supposed to teach. And when I walk out of the class, I don't carry any of that class's negativity or any of the other inklings with me to my next class. And that makes me a far better teacher. Because when I get into a class, everybody is same. When I get out of the class, everybody is same. But I need to evaluate them. Now, judgment is not same as evaluation. And many people ask me that if I don't judge them, how do I give them marks? How do I evaluate them? So what I evaluate is not them. What I evaluate is their performance in my subject with my questions during that day. So if you can reduce the complexity of the human to his or her performance in a very specific setting and evaluate, I think I have no conundrum. So I think we need to be very compassionate and empathetic.
You also mentioned say, too much of empathy also it sometimes is troublesome. That should be bounded. So
it's a good point. So again, a good point. So I believe that when people become too empathetic towards each other, the challenge that happens to them is that they lose a sense of perspective. I read it somewhere that too much of an empathy is perhaps vanity. It's self-love. Too much of empathy is vanity. That you are so much in love with yourself that you cannot be perceived as somebody who is judgmental. So you are empathetic. And when you become too empathetic, you are spoiling people around you and also your relationship with those people. I'll give you a very simple example of Indigo, for example. Now, Indigo is the most profitable airlines company in the country. The last I heard, they made a top line of 80,000 crores and a bottom line of 10,000 crores. And such a handsome bottom line is rare in the airlines industry, budget airlines industry, to say the least. And the reason they have done it is because they have had this amazing ability of operational excellence with customer centricity. And they practice bounded empathy. And the two boundary conditions or the two guide rails of empathy is, the first is technical feasibility, which is, can I do it? Is it technically feasible? The customer may be asking whatever, but can I do it? That's called technical feasibility. And the second guide rail is business viability, which means, should I do it? Which means even if I can do it, but should I do it? Now, what Indigo does is that while they will be all smiles at you when you are getting into the flight, getting off the flight, at the gate, etc. But the moment you are a minute late and the gate is closed, their empathy is no longer there. The moment you start behaving any funny in the flight, their empathy is no longer there. They would not bit an eyelid for you to get offloaded from the flight. So they have an empathy which is bounded by business logic and by their objectives in terms of timely performance, efficiency, productivity, operational excellence, etc. So what I've seen is the best run companies and the best led companies are the ones where empathy has a place under the sun. It's not boundless. And even same applies to parenting. If you're totally empathetic towards your parent, then I think you're just spoiling the child and creating harm for the other people around with your child's presence. So yeah, that's critical.
That's a really great insight. And the main point is about creativity. People think that intelligence is creativity or different thoughts. You mentioned differently actually, so you can share those insights about creativity.
Thanks, Pavan. Thanks for bringing that up as well. Creativity and intelligence are related but not same. Intelligence is your ability to identify and predict a pattern. That's intelligence. And machines are good at it because they can be trained to identify a pattern and predict a pattern. And that's why machines picked up the game of chess so very well. But the creativity is about creating a new pattern. But before that, destroying the old pattern. And that is where machines are very bad at. Machines by themselves cannot destroy a pattern. Humans can destroy a pattern. And change is about destroying the pattern before creating a new pattern. So what I've discovered is that the people who are perpetually good learners, or the people who have been at the helm of the affairs for the longest amount of time, and I talk about Atal Bihari Vajpayee in the book, or Winston Churchill for example, the people who have been for a very long time in context is because of their ability to break their own patterns. The patterns which have served them so well, they are willing to break them without somebody asking them to be broken or without them becoming completely counterproductive or ineffectual. And they can break the patterns. And breaking pattern is not easy. Because from the morning till night, your body is used to patterns. Your brush strokes, your foot,
sleeping pattern,
everything is patterned. And the reason your body, your family, your entire milieu loves patterns is because patterns reduce cognitive load. And you would rather appropriate your very scant cognitive capacities to things which are more complex than things which are harmless and amicable to a pattern. So we'll patternize whatever can be patterned. How many bites, size of the bite, how many shoes, all of that are so patterned. But the moment they get patterned, there is a very less hope for creativity to happen. So I think the way I would like to put it is that the creativity and intelligence are mediated by a variable called latent inhibition. So what science proposes is that the people who are highly intelligent as measured by IQ scores are not necessarily highly creative. And the relationship is the latent inhibition, which means what kind of a hesitation do you have. Now if you have a high latent inhibition, if you have high levels of hesitation, your intelligence would not create new patterns. You will come back to the same set of patterns. You will dismiss stimulus which are new, which are disturbing. But if your inhibitions are low, you would say what you like saying. You will do what you feel like doing. You will go to the place, you will experiment, you will forgive others and you will forgive yourself. And that is where a marginal change in intelligence, which is thanks to our education system, because education's primary focus has been intelligence development. And I believe that when education is focusing on intelligence, parenting should focus on creativity. Because many parents nowadays are blaming the school system of not making their child economically viable or what have you. But what they forget is the child is spending far more amount of time at home than at school. A far more unstructured time. And creativity requires unstructured play. So the big disservice that parents are perhaps doing to their children is to structure their day so tightly that there is no room for initiative. There is no room for independent thinking. There is no room for serendipity in the child's day. So he or she is hopping from one class to another class, from one institution to another institution, and by the time the child comes back home, she just either falls on the bed or gets glued to a device. And when I'm not leaving any room for unstructured play, no room for unstructured development of spending of your own time, I'm stripping my child of any creative potential. So I think we need to have a sort of a reasonable level of IQ, but we need to allow the child to be experimentative with that IQ so that these creative skills can flourish. And I believe going forward in a world where machines and us will coexist, a lot of intelligent work can be delegated to machines. Like the best path from this place to the airport, let the machine take care of it. Okay. What I need to do is, now that I have an airport bound car and I have half an hour or an hour with me, what do I do with that? That's a big question. And that's what Jaddu Krishnamurti in one of his famous talks in 1985 said. And 1985, which is, I think he was ahead of his times. And he said that going forward, a lot of things would be taken care of in developed societies, which leaves your mind with a lot of time. And you have only two options. One is to either absorb your mind in entertainment or absorb your mind in introspection. Unfortunately, what has happened is our mind has now gotten absorbed in entertainment. All in any form of entertainment. Because we have time now. Technology has taken a lot of labor away from me, both physical and emotional, mental labor. I have time. What do I do with the time? I can either do self-discovery and go deep and deep into myself, that who am I, what do I want, etc. Or I can explore the world in the form of entertainment. And sooner we realize that what a massive disservice which we are doing today, better it is for us as societies. Otherwise, technology can be a sort of a peril rather than a boon for us.
That's really true actually, because obviously mind will go for entertainment. It wants to forget its existence and asking deep questions. So moving forward, if we want to own our career, what we have to do, because everyone is not having choice, because we have financial liabilities and sometimes other commitments. And we are expecting everything from a single career, like satisfaction. And so how
that's
to in this kind of scenario, so how we have to own our career and getting maybe other aspects of life.
Exactly. So we'll keep this as the last question. So 3 tips. The first is, one has to think of career as a portfolio of enterprise. It's never a career or the career. It has to have a portfolio. Something will give you money, something will give you recognition, something will give you knowledge, something will give you affiliations to other people, something might just give you a shot at eternity. But when you have a portfolio, your emotions and your hopes are not banking on one thing and the only thing. If something goes down, something goes wrong, something else catches up. But what we have been told since the very beginning is that you have to think of a profession and then make it the profession and hang on to it.
Okay.
But that's not something that is advisable now. We are living in a times and in a world where a lot of possibilities are opening up, and you need to start seeing that can I bring a portfolio to my life, which is career as a portfolio of enterprise. Okay. For example, talking about me, I tend to write, read, teach, run my consulting firm, do executive coaching, and on the sidelines I also play chess and guitar. And I ensure that daily I'm playing chess. I play chess on a daily basis. I try to play guitar 2-3 times a week at least. But I try to do that. Now, I'm not trying to be the best in either of them, guitar or chess, but I need those two things, and I ensure that they are in my life. Even on a busy day, I would still take time out. And that is so that if the day did not go well for me, at least I have a guitar that I played well.
Yeah.
I have won a game on chess, and that makes up my day. That's the first thing. The second thing about how to design and lead a career is that you need to ensure that would you be comfortable being an individual contributor and a solopreneur rather than being a team player. Because many times people have been hammered into thinking that the only way to grow is to amass people under you, and then more people, and then henceforth and so on. But not necessarily true. There are certain set of people who are more comfortable being individual contributors, and I think they need to be honest to it and go about it. It goes back to the first question: greed, love, fear, and duty.
Right.
So if you are clear about it, stick to it and go with it without the fear. And the third piece about career is your ability to articulate well. For the longest time, it was thought that your contacts matter over your content.
Yes, people are talking about networking and create your own network.
And I think people are going overboard with this network business somehow. People are going randomly to events, dishing out cards, shaking hands, and sending requests. But I believe that in today's world, content is the king. Believe me, if we are talking sense in this video, it doesn't mean whether they know you or whether they know me. They'll still watch it. Not because they know us, because they like the content.
Yes.
Believe me. And in the world of social media and hyperconnectivity, if you have a good content, people will sniff you out. Come what may. You might be sitting in war-torn Ukraine, but if you're a good coder, you will be fetched. No problem with that. People don't have to even know you, nor somebody who know you. Your content shines. But at the same time, if you are heavily connected and if your content is not good, that not good content philosophy will amplify and people will start avoiding you.
Yes.
So I think to develop a good career, need to develop good content. And this good content happens by reading, writing, and teaching. You need to find opportunities, not formal teaching, but even if you're mentoring somebody, going out and teaching to people, I think that's a fantastic way of developing an attitude and an aptitude towards the whole thing.
You also mentioned that content gives clarity and that gives the courage.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. I really love that point. Content, clarity, and courage, and of course about seeing the bigger picture. And it's very critical for everyone because design our career is very, very critical and important. If you want to summarize your book, maybe like 3 points or 4 points so that audience can immediately they can go and apply.
Yeah. So the first thing that I would like to recommend is that we need to slow down. Focus on few critical things and do them well instead of trying to chase things. It's very, very critical. You have to be experimentative, okay, but don't pack too much. That's the first thing. The second thing is you need to be spiritually anchored. I can't overemphasize on this anymore, but any progress that you make in the external world would make you bereft if you have not made any progress in the internal world. And that's the reason very rich people, very famous people are very restless people, because they have not made any progress in and it's never too early to be spiritual. People often think that only at 60 I should talk about these things, till such time let me make some vulgar amount of money. But I think even at 20s you should never think that spirituality is not for me. If you get anchored spiritually, I think you will have a better life than otherwise. You will have less regrets. And the third thing is treat your body as an asset and not a resource. We tend to abuse our bodies in 20s, 30s and 40s because it doesn't show any immediate sign of abuse. But in your 50s and 60s, these things start surfacing. And what is worse than carrying a weak body in a long life?
Yes.
Right? Because in that case, you're dependent on people around you and you are a burden. They would only wish you away. So I think if you can respect your body and treat it like an asset, not a human resource, but a human asset, you begin with, and then others will treat you as an asset.
Correct.
I think you can have a fantastic life going forward. So take it easy, all right? Focus on your body and remain spiritually anchored are the 3 takeaways.
Great points, and also like finding the high leveraging activities.
Yeah.
That's important to manage the
Indeed.
flow. And
Yes.
Thank you so much, Pavan. And I also want to thank IMB because it's a beautiful campus, and you will feel so lively here. And we are recording live this podcast in IMB studio. Thank you so much, IMB, and thank you, Pavan. And all the very best for your insights in one more book, many books actually. Thank you so much.
Thanks.